working. All right, three, two, one, let's go. So, welcome to this section. I welcome Dan Zaman, guys. Um, Welcome to this section on YouTube. This is your maiden edition, Dan Zaman. We want to have a conversation today about the US, Iran, Ukraine, and other international issues. This is an area I know that you're very familiar with, and you have some really strong opinions about some of these issues because you're from North America yourself. Kindly introduce yourself to the channel, and let's begin the conversation.
Well, I've been on Sav's lives many times. And to be quite frank with you, a lot of people see me as the opposition because I tend to have opposing ideas and beliefs. We talk often about the situation in the Middle East. As somebody who was born in the Middle East but is a North American, I still have my opinions. And more or less, what I like to do is talk about ongoing events. Not too keen about going over facts from the past and historical ideas because we'll just run in circles. So I guess today's topic of conversation will be the situation with Iran in the United States, although I'm open to talk about Ukraine and Russia as well.
Okay. Yeah, fantastic. So let's begin back home in North America. What's really going on with the frosty relationship between the US and Canada? Recently, the Canadian Prime Minister was in China, and people were talking about him doing deals with China for EV cars, which is something you really oppose, because I spoke to you about it. And so, a host of economic deals that I think that the Prime Minister did with China. What is the state of the relationship between the United States and Canada at the moment?
To be honest with you, it is competitive. It is still friendly between the companies that work between each other, although the governments might be saying opposing ideas. I know we have multiple tariffs on each other, and in fact, Canada has had tariffs on the United States for many years now on certain products. But basically, what's going on is good competition between the two countries. The news may say that it is aggressive and, you know, leading towards us being annexed, but nothing of the sort is going to happen. It is just strictly business adversary between the two nations. And, you know, I know Trump has been quite vocal about Canada recently and our prime minister, but overall, I would say our prime minister is working towards securing our economy. I may not be a big fan of him, but I can say and speak for many Canadians that we are not in a very strong financial situation at the moment. And so we're making deals. We're making deals with China. And whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing, everybody makes deals with China. And I find it quite interesting when the President of the United States has an opinion about us trading with China, while the United States itself is, you know, exponentially more bigger in trade.
Yeah,
with
the US is the largest trading partner of China in the world.
Of course.
They buy a lot more stuff from China than anybody else in the world. But
Of course.
I think it's a power sort of politics where the US is, you have this big neighbor, giant behemoth, an elephant of a neighbor. I think you're too small to try to have an opinion of your own. And yeah, so when you say it's competitive, don't you see why some people would disagree with you that what's the competition here? America wants to dump goods on you. That would be too expensive. The Chinese are giving to you at a very, very low rate, which, and if you look at the values that the Chinese are offering you, some will say it's better. I mean, you can say the quality of the goods or whatever it is, if it's about cars and fridge and other electronics, if you like, China could give you a better deal. But the US is trying to dump things on you that are very expensive. So it's about comparative advantage. So America wants you to prop up the economy, albeit in a very small way. But you see, they are trying to do that to every other country around them. So I don't think, in my opinion, and I believe a lot of Canadians are also looking at this and will say, this is not in our best interest. Why are we going to pay over the odds just to make the Americans happy where we can buy some of these things from China?
Well, the reality is, if you spend a lot of time speaking to Canadians, we are very hardworking people, and some of the facts about the two countries is that we supply the United States with a lot of different resources that they don't have themselves. Um, and if he wants to dump things on us, that's totally understandable. But the relationship between the countries is purely economic. And I think that there are companies making deals with each other. We have trucks going back and forth between the two countries. And if we deal with China a little bit, so be it. With that being said, I'm not for some of the things that are coming into Canada from China, one of them being vehicles. As a very cold country, I don't believe that the vehicles made in China are made to survive Canadian winters, but we'll see. We'll see. They'll arrive here. They'll be cheaper. Maybe. We'll see. Knowing Canada will make things a lot more expensive. We tend to do that because we are very big on money, making money, and surviving this harsh climate. And so, when things come over here, they tend to triple in price. Um, so
Yeah,
I,
so yeah, I really don't want to dwell on this topic because there are other topics we need to look at. But when
right.
you say there are other things that Canada is sending towards the other direction, are you talking about hydrocarbons? Are you talking about rare earth minerals? Are you talking about agricultural products and dairies and
Uh,
so on and so forth? What
we send
exactly are
them a
you
lot
giving to
of
the United States?
We send them a lot of potash, which they use to farm. We have a lot of it, and they do require it. Natural resources. I mean, our lumber is a pretty big export. We have a lot of lumber, and I know the president of the United States have said we don't need their lumber. We have our own. We are um, providing quality lumber, cheaper lumber, and we have exponentially more lumber than they do. And it's just something that he tries to leverage. We also um, provide different components of vehicles, and I know that's a big conversation in my province, specifically in Canada, because we make engines and transmissions and parts of vehicles that are then later off sent into the United States. But we do supply them with a lot. There's a reason that we're their neighbor, and there's a reason that we are only several cents less of a dollar than they are. We make money and we work hard for it too, and we have lots of resources.
Yeah, but others, and this is the final point. The US President Donald Trump said recently that his intention is to make Canada the 54 states of the United States. And some say, it's laughable. This is just a joke. This is just President Trump being hysterical. But
Hmm.
he's actually down on business. He means it. We've seen the sort of pressure he put on Greenland and, the tariff war, the sanctions. Canada is an ally of the United States. What the
That's
hell is
correct.
going on?
I think it's all just to leverage the United States size and their economy. We are quite a big competitor with them, and we hurt them quite a few times. Um, I think we cut off their alcohol sales, and one of their biggest states, Tennessee, I believe it was, freaked out because their sales went down. Believe it or not, at one point, my province, the Liquor Board of Ontario, was the biggest purchaser of alcohol in the world. We're big alcoholics there or here, and so, you know, he'll talk a big game. We do hurt him quite a few times, but whether or not he's going to come and take over Canada, it's quite a big feat to take. We have different laws, different tax. We have different
Mhm.
medical system. It's not something you can just come in and grab.
Okay, you do consider yourself conservative. Is that correct?
I'm a conservative voter, but what that means to you might be different because Canadian conservatives might be a little bit different from the rest of the world.
Yeah, but and you're familiar with the politics of the United States. So when you
Yep.
look at scenes coming from Minnesota, we look at American rhetoric on migrants. When you look at the policies of President Trump, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to immigration in particular, when it comes to the customs enforcement, is it immigration and customs enforcement, ICE? When it comes to people of color and the rhetoric against Nigerians and Somalis and South Africans and so on and so forth, is it the sort of politics you support? And are there some things in between the lines that you believe is actually true?
Um, it's a very touchy subject for a lot of people. I wouldn't say I'd support 100% of what they're doing there because it's one thing for you to say that you want to get illegals out of your country. It's another thing to go around and grab anybody you see unlawfully sometimes. Um, it's not something we do here in Canada. But
Mhm.
that being said, we are not much different. We had a huge influx of students from multiple countries that overstayed their visas, and we have to get them out. And we have our own ways of doing it. That being said, we don't go around grabbing people and deporting them, sending them into a jail. So, do I agree with what the United States is doing? Not fully. I understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, you understand because I think you said something recently about the housing problem in Canada, and you solely blame this on immigrants.
Yes, we have a big issue here where, well, it's a an issue with multiple different factors. One, you have immigrants that come in that are very rich from foreign countries and buy property here, only to turn them into Airbnbs or rental units. So Canadians like myself can't actually purchase a house because it is occupied. Um, by somebody living there who's not actually there. On the other hand, we have housing situations where there are up to 12 people living in one home. And it's a home designed for a family of four. Is it optimal? No. Something that we are really bad at doing is bringing in immigrants and providing housing for them, quite obviously. But that's
What
a
is the
whole
what
different
is the
situation.
yeah, what is the whole stuff with the regulations around housing? Isn't the government of Canada rich enough to build low cost housing? Why don't you pick up from the model of, in fact, there's some cities in China that are ghost towns because they have a lot of housing. And China
Yeah.
is, I don't know, 20, 40, 100 times bigger than Canada. And they're
Ano-
able to solve this housing problem. Why can't the
yeah.
Canadian government invest, let's say, 100 billion, $80 billion in providing affordable housing with this vast amount of land you have? Just build house, and give it to people and just like rent it out, or you sell it to them at low cost, or design a program around it and solve the problem. It's a very wealthy country. Would that be viewed as socialism? Is that why the government is running away from that, or is the government just not interested in helping the citizens?
Um, That's a good question, but once again, it's not that simple. Unfortunately, a lot of land that is in Canada is either public land or private land. And so we have something called crown land, which belongs to the crown. And so you can't technically build things there. Another issue is that you can't build really far up north. We have very small communities, and anybody's welcome to open up Google Earth and go through the northern towns of Canada. It's not very big. Not a lot of land is usable. We're also very close to the border with the United States for trade, and so land seems abundant, but it's not. Another issue is that the government did invest a lot of money into housing, but unfortunately, we have some pretty bad regulations with housing here, where um, you know you'll give out money to construction companies, they'll take it, and then they won't build the housing for whatever reason. It will fail. And even if you look at the federal budget of last year, or this year actually, for the Liberal government, um, their amount of money allocated for housing will sum up to about 100,000 houses. I might be wrong, maybe 200. But that's not enough. And so it looks like billions of dollars, but our houses are very expensive to build. And so it actually doesn't end up being a lot of homes. I know China
So
can do it, but we're not
yeah,
China.
China can do it. So basically, it's a failure on the part of the government. It's a failure of the bureaucracy and the bottlenecks attached to the system you're practicing, with a lot of
Mhm.
principles of checks and balances and protocol and so on and so forth.
Of
So
course, we have
it's
municipalities, provincial government, and federal. The federal provides the money, the provincial government will take it, they'll distribute it to the municipalities. It goes from one hand to another hand to another, and by the time it trickles down, where'd that money go?
well, one quick story on that as well. The former prime minister of and the founder of modern day Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, he said he visited uh, visited Mumbai. So Mumbai is in the state of Maharashtra in India. And then when he went there, he spoke to, I think, the governor or the chief minister. And he asked the chief minister, "You guys are the richest in India. I mean, you can solve this problem, this of urbanization, including all the social, economic problems. But what you do is that you send money to like the villages and the provinces and whatever around.
Mhm.
And why don't you take that money and fix Mumbai?" And then the answer he gave is like, "Look, there are a lot of legislations, and apart from that, because of the system we practice, we have to go to the center to seek approval from the parliament in New Delhi, and then because the constituency, like the voting power, is also from the rural area, so you have to take money from Mumbai and invest in the farmers because if you don't do that, so it's the sort of problems that you have that cities cannot independently, you know, they're not set up to do so. In China, what you have is you have provinces that operate that like have a lot of power to operate independently. Okay, there's a story of this guy called Bo Xilai, who later got in trouble. In the lead up to the 2013 Congress, he was touted as one of the guys that was supposed to take over or be one of the top figures in the generation of the CCP that came to power, where you have Xi Jinping today. He's a princeling. He's a son of a guy called Bo Yibo. And then when he was governor of Chongqing, it was the model he used there that other states started using. Rapid economic development, investment in public social services, building bridges, schools. So the Chinese are very aggressive. They know that they have a lot of catching up to do. Okay. And even in the area of tech, you see people independent, particularly these provinces. And when it was, I think, the mayor or something of Dalian, he did exactly the same thing. Polluted city of Dalian, which is, I think, along the Yangtze River, clean it up. So you don't have the same model in these so-called Western democratic systems because of the red tape, because of the bottleneck, because of the structure and the setup of this government. And for instance, unfortunately, that's the kind of model we're practicing in Africa. We want to be like the West. You have African leaders going and copy paste the American model, and it's clearly not working. I mean, we are like 300 years behind the Americans. America is struggling, and America right now is like 20 or 30 years behind China, in my opinion, because they're not efficient enough. They're not able to build. And it's a trap. It's a perpetual trap, in my opinion. So let's move on to the next topic, which is Iran. What
Mhm.
the hell is going on? A lot of noise is coming out of America and Canada and all these European countries. Recently, the
Mhm.
U.S. president, in I think Davos, in the World Economic Forum, the Europeans were making a lot of noise about Greenland. We are not going to allow the Americans to come in here, and so on and so forth. And President Macron went there and gave a very powerful speech condemning, the stance of America. And President Trump showed his phone or the text message between him and Macron saying, "Look, these guys are hypocrites. He's telling me for us to go and bomb Iran together, and then he's telling me, oh, but you can't come to Greenland." That's Trump's model of of politics. So it seems that the Europeans are on board with America going to Iran,
Mhm.
bombing from the sky or whatever they decide to adopt there, because we are seeing a lot of American kinetic apparatus moving towards the Persian Gulf and around the area, either to use the threat of the use of force or to apply real force to demand concessions and acquiescence from the government in Tehran. And this is on the backdrop of the Iranian government being accused of cracking down on protesters. And there's a number being banded around. Some are saying it's probably 10,000, 50,000, 3,000. The one I saw from Reuters is saying 6,000. We don't even know what the number is. But there's a clear pattern to give out information that is detrimental and sort of a death sentence against the regime to garner public support, particularly domestic support in some of these European countries and in America. The clear messaging targeting women and saying this is a moral obligation. We also know we have geopolitical ambitions in Iran, but think about it. Why are women in 2025 forced? And this is coming from the Western press. All of them, they are all on the same page. CNN, Fox, whether on the left, on the right. that the women are being enslaved and treated like they're in the dark ages, being forced to wear the chador, the niqab, and the hijab. So America have a responsibility. This is the messaging, by the way, and an obligation to go there to bomb from the sky if necessary to save the women from wearing the niqab. What's your take on what is going on in Iran?
Well, as somebody who lives in a country with a big diaspora of people from Iran, and they're calling for the government there to step down and be changed to a monarchy, I can totally understand why.
Mhm.
But my focus isn't so much on whether or not that should happen. I'm more focused on whether or not the United States will act. I think that's more interesting to me. Um, I say that because all day today I've been monitoring multiple sources of the sheer amount of logistics being moved towards the Middle East,
Mhm.
and not just my opinion, but the opinion of multiple people is that with the amount dedicated to move some of the equipment that has been moved, it's clear that the decision is to move forward. You don't simply waste this much money for nothing. Um, just a couple of hours ago, the United States moved um, a well-equipped C-130 aircraft towards Georgia or Azerbaijan, either one of those, and you don't simply just move something like that if you're not going to act with it. And so, at this point, this is how I feel. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it's going to happen.
So you're very positive that the US will use kinetic means to get rid of the government.
Well, let me I guess rephrase what I'm trying to say. It's clear through multiple sources, not just North American ones and European ones, that the United States has committed to something. We had statements from Russia that said, "Well, we hope they don't touch the nuclear power plant." You don't say something like that unless you don't know. And as we know, um, countries warn each other of strikes behind the scenes. I know the news doesn't like to share it, but behind the scenes, they warn each other of their intentions. And so, we saw it when Iran struck the military base.
In Qatar.
Yeah, they warned them. Of course, they warned them. They had to. But Russia has stated something that is quite alerting. And in a recent move, I think the European Union, if I'm not mistaken, claimed that the IRGC is now a terrorist organization. It's not something that you do for nothing. This is all
Yeah.
meticulous. It's all, it's moving in the direction. The percentage of this, the percentage of the chances of the strike happening are growing more and more every day. But like, just look at the. Oh, Sav, you disappeared there for a sec. I lost Sav. I think we lost them.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
What happened? Is it me or is it you?
Okay, Danzaman, I want you to come back.
I don't know if I'm back. Is it me or is it you? What
Yeah,
happened?
it's from my end. I'm sorry.
Oh, my bad.
That's from my
Um,
end. I'm sorry. Yeah, but we're back.
No problem.
Yeah.
I was going to say that, we witnessed multiple air refueling tankers flying today. And that's not something that just happens on a daily. It's not something that's done for just exercises. Um, what really interests me is those are assets that we see, and people are picking those up off of things like flight radar, public public knowledge, right? What's actually behind the scenes? Where are the American submarines? They're somewhere there. We know that they use them. And we saw speaking of airplanes, we saw a presidential Iranian airplane fly to Russia, and Russia didn't announce any delegation meetings, and they usually do. So, things are mounting. And, as we know, President Trump strikes on weekends when the market closes. Is it this weekend or is it next weekend? Is it the weekend after that? How much assets are going to be moved into the Middle East before this happens? That's what I'm looking at.
So are you more, your permutations, are they more aligned towards using this threat of the use of force as a bargaining chip to get some sort of acquiescence from the government? Or is the intention to remove, to uproot the regime from the root? Because again, all of these things are caused, people talk about regime change like it's, oh, look at what we did in Venezuela. And we look at the
Yeah.
success in Venezuela, it looks like, oh, this is easy, man. Well, if Trump can do this, he can do this in Iran. The situation in Iran is different. And
Hmm.
somebody licking their lips and say, oh, it's going to kill 5 million people, probably China. The Russians are worried because they don't want another American presence in that area. With the role of Azerbaijan, you talked about moving assets to that area. This
Hmm.
is the US moving closer to Russia because Russia is a dominant player in that area in the Caspian Sea, and there's
Yeah.
abundance of energy in the Caspian Sea. And if you look at the map of Iran, the population is lopsidedly located in the north. Tehran, places like Tabriz, which is in East Azerbaijan, and the Kurdish areas and the border with Iraq. And that also poses a different problem because if you're going towards that direction, the Kurds are also divided. You have the power block in Erbil, and you have another one in Suleimania. So the Kurds, we might see an uprising happening there again, turning against each other. And then you have
Hmm.
a militia in Iraq that is about 240 or 250,000 strong fighters ready. The Hashd al-Shabi, the Popular Mobilization Forces. The history goes back a long time, particularly during the Iran-Iraq War in the 80s. They reemerged again during the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003 with people like the leaders of the Mahdi army, Muqtada al-Sadr, Hadi al-Amri, Abu Mahdi al-Mohandis, who was killed in the airstrike by Trump during his first tenure, with the leader of the Al-Quds of Iran, Qasem Soleimani. So there's a
Hmm.
strong tie from Basra in Iraq all the way to Mashhad. Spiritual connection, political connection. These are the same people. They speak Farsi and they speak Arabic. So, and some of the holy sites are also located down south in places like Najaf and Karbala. So we might see a possibility of a spillage of this conflict, and it also would open the wounds again to some sort of sectarian dimension to it. So the Americans are going in now to break up brick by brick the region again, as we saw in 2003. So I'm really worried. Are you worried as an American or as a Canadian?
No, of course I'm worried. I'm specifically worried about the people down in Iran, because if they were to go down the path of overthrowing the regime, just because you strike military targets and nuclear targets doesn't disarm the regime of their weapons. They will still use them on their own people, whether or not that news coming out of Iran is true. And we do know for a fact that there is an internet blackout, and that doesn't happen without reason, right? So, you know, um, is it going to be an easy overthrow of the regime? I don't think so. As long as there are small arms on the ground, you can suppress people. You can suppress them long enough that nothing happens. but you will lose a big chunk of your air defense systems. You might lose critical infrastructure. So I think that's something that is important for us to look at. And we'll see how that goes. I understand that Iran has a lot of allies in the Middle East. They've spent um, years and years and years supplying weapons and money to a lot of groups. But as we saw with Hezbollah, the head of the snake can be cut off, and it's possible. It's been done. We'll see what's in store for them.
Yeah, but uh, people keep talking about the situation in Lebanon. Lebanon is a tiny piece of turf. And if you look at the power base of Hezbollah, it's located in the south of Beirut, in Dakhia. So it's a very concise area that you can obliterate and deny them the social oxygen to be able to operate. Iraq is 10 times, 15 times the size, with people, militia spread everywhere.
Mhm.
And Iran is, I don't know, 100 times the size of these entities. I'm not sure. Take a look at Iran. It's mountainous. There'll be different factions spread all over the country, from Tabriz in the north to Bandar Shah in the south, or what they call the Bandar Abbas. So yeah,
Mhm.
decapitating the regime and denying it the social base of support is possible. Bombing it from the sky and taking out the leadership is very, very possible. But governance on the ground, with boots on the ground, to ensure you keep that, because you're bringing in somebody else, right? You're going to bring the son of the Shah, the erstwhile Shah.
I had a phone call and I had to put it down. Um, I heard what you said. So, in my opinion, um, yes, the percentage of influence is scattered throughout the Middle East. Some areas might have a little bit of the United States and Russia and Iran's influence in it, and other areas could just be exclusively Iran, as we see in Lebanon, the South, and Yemen. Are you there? You seem kind of frozen. I think we lost Sav, unfortunately, or maybe myself. We lost them again. Dang it.
Welcome back. I losing connection every time is not palatable. Welcome to
Oh,
Africa.
that's okay.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I was saying that I agree with you that the sphere of influence is different throughout the Middle East. Some pockets might have a little bit of Russia in it, and some pockets might have the United States in it and Iran. Some pockets could be exclusively Iran's influence, like Yemen, and some of them could be the southern of Lebanon, right? But I
yeah.
don't think that changes things. When you are going to cut the head off the snake and strike the leadership of Iran, that makes things so much more complicated for all these factions. And can it cause destabilization?
Mhm.
Um, Potentially. I also know that, for the other side, it's not exclusively like we're going to get rid of the leadership in Iran and the monarchy is just going to come on in. The
Mhm.
United States funds another group that could potentially come on in, and they live in Albania. I'm pretty sure that group is pretty big there. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. But I strongly believe that they're moving towards getting rid of the leadership. It's just one of the things you need to do to change the way things goes. Now, before I forget, I wanted to mention something. Um, Iran supplies a lot of drones to Russia. That's well known.
Mhm.
And what I started thinking is this just a piece of the puzzle where you leverage against Russia and the war in Ukraine, where you stop the supply of drones and other weaponry to
Absolutely not.
Russia? You don't think so?
Absolutely not. So what Iran did was they supplied a lot of the prototype, what they call the Shahid. Because I've been following the drone warfare in Russia. The Russians are now self-sufficient. At the beginning, America was supplying Ukraine didn't even use most of those American drones because they were not really performing well. They were too expensive. Now you have Bayraktar, a company in Turkey, which is I think owned or run by the brother-in-law of the prime minister running. So Ukraine is producing domestically from bedrooms. The technology, the way, in fact, Russia, what the Putin have done in the lead up to the war with bringing people like Mikhail Mishustin and removing the defense minister Sergei Shoigu and bringing in people that actually know how these things work. They have decentralized, a lot of things. And they are also copied the Ukrainian model. So you have a lot of startups in Russia mass producing drones from their homes. And even the Shahid drones that Iran was giving to Russia at the beginning, the Russians have retrofitted it with, better gas, performing, and added a lot of, better performing tools to it that are more devastating. So, yes, they might need Iran for, militias, for other reasons, but there could be for other reasons, not just for drones. It's the support that Iran also gives politically, and also the manpower it sends on the field. So what you're doing is that you're shrinking the Russian sphere of influence by decapitating governments after government that are in support. So that can happen in Moldova. That can now happen in Belarus. That can now happen in Georgia. It can happen, and moving closer to the southern part of Russia, like this place, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. So you weaken Russia from, by taking out their allies one after the other. And it's also the situation with China, because China is, depends on Iran for cheap oil, and the Chinese have refused to lift one finger. I don't know what their game is. It's long-term game. Is it strategic? Are they waiting for America to commit? There are two ways. It's either you go in and stop them from doing it, and China can actually stop the United States if they want. If they have Afghanistan, for instance, and Afghanistan is willing to play balls, but that's also dangerous because America can turn on them, or they can have Pakistan, but they don't have Pakistan, so that's also another problem. So there are so many risks you can take here. And China can also get involved by actually denying America the ability to go in there willy-nilly, or with full force rather, as they're trying to do, and reverse America's power in the region. But they can also allow them to go in and commit resources there. You said they're moving a lot of firepower to that region, and then that can free up the hand of China in the Pacific. So it's very expensive, huh? And China is also monitoring carefully what is going on. So China can look for other alternatives for their energy. They're drilling in the Arctic now. You're making things easier to. So China is looking for 10 million alternatives to whatever the US is doing. So these are the two calculations that the people in Beijing are looking at. Russia could be the biggest loser at in short term, but we don't know how this will pan out. American power can be buried completely in that place, because you're looking at it from the aspect, let's do Israel. Israel depends on America for missiles, for defense, tech, and so on and so forth. And America depends on China for 90 something percent of their supplies of rare earth magnets that they need for their air defense, for their missile systems, and so on and so forth. There's a sort of truce at this point, and China have agreed to continue to supply them. But if this war in Iran starts and China decides to go to Taiwan, and this is why the Russians are very, very adamant about having any ceasefire with Ukraine. They were supposed to meet in Abu Dhabi. All of that has been called off. So everybody is calculating what they can gain. And the war because Trump, here's the thing, when you sit on that seat and you look at what you've just done to the Europeans, you kick them in the balls, emasculated them, and they say, daddy. The Europeans call Trump daddy, and he brags about it. I think it was the NATO Secretary General that called him daddy. It's weird. And then you see what you've done to Maduro. You went into Venezuela, took the president and the wife, and threw them in jail. So you are emboldened. You feel like you are the king of. And so whatever Bush and all these people, the mistakes they made in the past, it can't be you, because you know what you're doing. Until, look, if you bomb after 30 days of bombing, 20 days of all those things you're talking about, you only find out after bombing for 20 days, and you don't make the kind of progress you're looking for, and then you start going to Congress. and then this is an existential threat. You need your allies, and then everybody start going into the region, and now you need boots on the ground. And then you go in and stay there for 5 years. Oh, for 2 years we can do it, and it goes on, and every day you see T attacks. You create a problem in the region that spills into Saudi Arabia. There's significant Shia population. These guys, again, I might be wrong. This is just my permutation, that this might snowball to bigger things, and we might find ourselves in a position of no return. Well, Trump is a big guy. I don't think he's doing well with his health either. And ExxonMobil is telling him, again, I don't have any evidence to this. This is just me speculating, that ExxonMobil is somewhere, sitting down somewhere and say, we can do this, President. We want to get our companies back on the ground. We want to go back to our $1 trillion status again. And President Trump is the one that can actually do it. They truly believe that's the one that can actually do it. Yeah, okay, sorry. I think you dropped.
I'm still here. I'm still here.
Okay, because it's flipping in and out. So they truly believe that, he's the one that can do it. And this is why, moving all those firepower there, and the Russians did that. You see what the Russians did? They moved everything. The war in Ukraine have diminished American stockpiles in so many ways. The Israel-Palestine war have diminished. I'm not talking of Israel. American stockpile in so many ways. So the U.S. is ramping up production, but some of those things require years to go back to. So the Russians have diminished their stockpile, so has the United States. And this is what Trump was saying when he came in, like, hang on a second, why are we giving all of this to Ukraine? So again, I want you to tell me how America intends to do this if it doesn't go according to plan.
Well, it was a lot, but to be quite frank with you, one thing that you need to remember is the United States military and industrial complex is the biggest logistics company in the world. They get things done in ways that no other country can do it, in fast ways. It's unbelievable how many aircraft they have. It's unbelievable how many service members they have. The technology, their reach throughout the whole world. Do I know whether or not it'll be successful? No, nobody really knows that. Do I agree with you that it's going to be an absolute shit show when it goes down? I don't think Iran's going to go down without lobbing a few missiles everywhere, setting things ablaze. That's something that you do when things are, going bad for you. Will it destabilize some areas? Of course. Wherever Iran's influence was, it'll destabilize things. You lose your leaders. You don't know who to communicate with. You don't know where your funding comes from. And power will change and shift. But at the end of the day, if your biggest source of fuel for the fire is put out, then your fire goes out. If it doesn't go out, your flames are just going to spread everywhere else. So it's not something that I can really debate with you on. I agree with you. If it's not successful, things look bad. And if it is successful, we don't even know if things are going to get good, right? It's complicated. Like one of the examples that I use is like, take a look at Syria. Syria is always and has always been full of different spheres of influence in it. And so the Middle East, for countries that are not super stable, will just turn into a brand new Syria. That's what I think will happen if Iran doesn't, topple over nicely and things go the way that the United States plan it. So,
okay, let's look at some of the comments.
My point that I wanted to really nail in here is that the United States military is the biggest logistics company in the world. It's not even fathomable how successful and how quick they are at doing things, and the precision.
We can put that to a test real quick, but before we do that, we have to look at the comments. Leah says, I'm loving this dialogue. Appel said, Magdi will rise and lead his army. Fofana is saying hello. Then Biden, Elijah is saying Biden just wanted us, Ukraine and Russian war, to test American weapons. Biden messed up, man. Elijah said now the war between Ukraine have now become the drone capacity testing war. It's a pity. Yeah, so these are some of the comments. So, like you said, American military machine is, you can't compare it. So they have the resources to mobilize personnel and so on and so forth. And you're saying this excluding, because I saw this report that Chinese are building, the naval capacity of China has now overtaken that of the United States. The Chinese are building, the Chinese are not building like aircraft carriers, because they're giant floating objects that can be sunk. I mean, I'm not saying you can do that easily. In 2013, there's a Chinese Rear Admiral Luo Yuan. Somebody can write that in the comments. Rear Admiral Luo Yuan. And he made this statement. He said, look, what America fears most is taking casualties. That China should attempt to sink one of their aircraft carriers and kill and sink with it 5,000 American personnel, and so they can see how the United States react. The Chinese have been bragging about the fact that they know the weak link for some of these aircraft carriers that the US is so proud of. America is not building like smaller vessels, frigates, destroyers that much. They're focusing on these elephantine vessels, that can move all these logistics. But these things can be tested. So, like I said, the report says that China is building between 200 to 300 of these mid-range and small vessels that can do real combat on the sea, and America is building 5 to 6. So you're talking about logistic capability and so on and so forth. And that's not the only thing. We spoke before about the automobile industry of China and why America is trying to squeeze it. Well, that department is very important, because if China is building a full car on average 5 to 10 minutes to build, and the US can't do it. I mean, everything is robotic, everything is designed, and some of these companies are underground, they're everywhere. So China is not just building these things for the purpose of feeding the international market. This can also be converted to military industrial complex. Some of the bases that China have all over the world, not bases, some of the ports that they've invested. If you take a look at the map and you see the areas that China is building all these ports, civilian ports, all of them have military grade capabilities that can easily be converted. So I'm not saying that China is going to war with America. The case here for discussion is Iran. And you're bragging about this capability of America and the military industrial complex to mobilize, to build, and the the ability of them, the ability of the US to to deploy everywhere, because of they have over 800 military outposts and so on and so forth. So yeah, that can be put to a test. And the way it works is that it could have a domino effect, that if they fail somewhere, it is possible that it will affect. And we're not just looking at the Middle East or Western Asia alone. There's tension between India and Pakistan. Iran is just on the border. Pakistan is complaining that the Baloch resistance there, the BLM and the BLA, is funded by India and Israel. That problem is also affecting Iran. It's on both sides of the border. You have the Baloch problem there. Iran is also dealing with the Baloch problem. So Pakistan might step in if they see a flow of weapons coming from Iran to destabilize Pakistan. Afghanistan itself is dealing with a host of other issues. And India, again, can go in there with the intention of supporting some of these guys. And then you have Israel, who's going to bomb everybody from the sky if they have what it takes. I mean, all of this will run out at some point, and America will have to ration to defend itself. And then some of this, again, this is just me speaking hypothetically, Sometimes we think we're smart. Well, all of this can go out of the window by the US using tremendous firepower to squeeze Iran once and for all. Like I said before, and this is the last point, I saw a lot of protests in Russia when Yevgeny Prigozhin turned against Putin. He was angry for one reason. Why the fuck are we doing this? Why are we playing with Ukraine? We have what it takes to squeeze them in 1 week and go home. Why are we losing men trying to follow the rules of engagement? That if this was the US, the US would have done this in 1 week with any means possible, and that Russia has the means. But that President Putin was trying to look too good before the international community, and is trying to follow the laws of war, the rules of engagement, follow the Geneva Conventions, and so on and so forth. And this is why, if you look at the Russia-Ukraine conflict, as bad as it is, the number of combatant casualty far outweighs the civilian, loss, and it's never happened any time in modern warfare. So yeah, I believe America is not held to the same morality, and they can go in and use napalm, whatever they need to use, and bring an end to it once and for all, and nobody's going to lift the lead. I mean, the United Nations is going to sanction the US? Absolutely not. So again, these are just my own permutations, and we're watching to see what happens.
Well, one thing I want to say, if we're going to be applying some of these things to the United States, we got to apply them to the other countries too. But that being said, as I said, logistics-wise, they're unmatched. And something that's interesting, like you brought up the aircraft carrier. Trust me, if we've talked about it, military analysts have talked about it too. I know China says we're going to hit them with a hypersonic missile, and Russia says it too, and Iran says it. We're going to hit their aircraft carrier with a hypersonic missile. If it was that simple, okay, and if it was that much of a threat, the United States wouldn't be carrying themselves around the way that they are. If you look at how the aircraft carriers and the strike groups travel across the continent, there is multiple layers of defense. It's not just an aircraft carrier in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the water, ready to be hit by a hypersonic missile. Okay, you're traveling in between rings of air defense. You're talking about one layer of air defense that will hit the hypersonic missile here and here and here. So when I hear things like, okay, well, we're going to hit an aircraft carrier and sink it, if we've thought about it, plain people with no military experience, then military analysts have definitely thought about that threat. Everything's been thought of. And China does it too. India does it too. Iran does it too. Although Iran's aircraft carrier is just an oil tanker with a flat piece of foam on the top. And that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, but you say that, which is very funny. No country have dared to challenge American power. So no country
Why
have
do you think
actually...
that is?
No, yeah, exactly, because they know that if they try it, and even if they succeed, there'll be a price to pay. But
Huge price.
When you come to Iran and your intention is to obliterate it, all gloves are off. So they can try, and if they try and test and it works, then again it will demystify this whole idea that the battle group and all this submarine and everything is supporting it. You don't really know until you try. Okay, so this idea that it's impossible, look at the whole layers of air defense and so on and so forth. It's the same thing we had about Israel. After day 1, day 2, day 3, the Iranians started hitting with increasing accuracy. Boom, boom, boom. Because again, you run out of the missiles, because again, I spoke about the the magnets that are needed for some of this defensive tech that Israel started running out of, because they're getting from the United States, and the US didn't have enough. I'm not saying that the US will not completely obliterate the government in Iran, but after all is said and done, after the first 20 days and they decapitate the government, then what you have is a band of ragtag militias in different groups that will not allow whoever you're putting in power to stay. And what happens? It turns to a rat warfare in the cities, and it turns to a drawn-out war of attrition, or even a civil war. And then America will have to bring in personnel on the ground to prop up the regime like they did in Afghanistan. And where are they going to stay? In Tabriz, in Bandar Abbas. They're going to stay in the north, in Tehran. And the other part of the country will be run by militias. I'm not saying that will happen, but this is just my permutation based on what we've seen in the past.
Well, sure, you can definitely come to that conclusion. Of course, if it's happened in the past, then there's reasonable, chances for it to happen again. But like I said, it's hard to go over hypotheticals. What we do know is that those aircraft carriers are not just in the middle of the water. And we can say, oh, well, Iran can strike them. Sure, maybe there's a couple of percents, right? But should you go saber rattling and saying that you're just going to do it so easily? I don't think so. It's not something that we should be Like the United States military is not something to be overlooked. And one point I want to say is what they're known for is they value their human lives a lot more than their technology. You know, you hit an American on the ground, you are going to be chased down. And that's something that a lot of militias in the Middle East know. And they found out for many, many years that, you know, you kill an American serviceman, you will probably
Yeah,
be hunted
there are a
down.
lot. There are a lot of them in the region that will be wiped out. To be honest, because Iran. What I found out the last time, and the rhetoric coming from Tehran, is that it's very expensive to fight with Israel because of the distance, because of the propinquity, you know, or the lack of it, if you like. But those American bases are in close proximity. So whoever is hosting the Americans in that region will have to pay. So Iran is going to go down, but it will completely change a lot of things in the region.
Of course.
So most of those assets you're using to fire all the way to Israel and it gets blown up in the air, there's no air defense system in Qatar that's going to stop it. I mean, you can try or hit one or two. In Kuwait, it's Saudi Arabia, because these countries have been playing with fire. They're the ones that brought in the Americans, you know. And look, I made another argument again because sometimes I like to challenge the point of views that I have. I said, look, the best thing for Iran to do, normalize with America, normalize with Israel, and let's see the attitude of these Arab countries, and let's see who's the enemy at this point. Why don't you just do it and see? Because of course you have to have an enemy. This is the way the system works, right? You should have an enemy. Why don't this government drop the whole idea of challenging? America is not even against whether it's an Islamic Republic or not. They just want their interests protected. They just want the regime to stop chanting death to Israel, death to America, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And then normalize and do. Trump is not asking for a lot from what I heard. I think it's the ballistic missile program they have to halt. It's them having some sort of holistic agreement on their nuclear technology and so on and so forth, and stop funding some of these militias. If you
Mhm.
do that, you normalize with the West. Just normalize with Israel. I don't think they're going to do it. I am
Yeah.
asking them to do it
Yeah.
so that these Arab countries that have been dancing on the grave of Iranians, who are the ones supporting the Palestinian cause, I want them to drop all of that. Think about this theory, right? Drop all of that. Now be the puppet of America, and let's see how the Arabs react. Because eventually, the fight is going to go somewhere else. I'll suggest America is going to face somebody else. Okay, so if the Iranian Shias are the problem, why don't you just drop all of that, normalize with America, say no, I'm not going to support the Palestinian cause anymore. I'm not going to fund some of these militias anymore. I want to be friend of Israel. I want to be friend of Israel, and let's see how the Americans come about. And they won't accept it. It's crazy when you come up with this kind of ideas, and let's see how the Americans are able to accept this, and the Arabs are able to accept this. So it's damned
As
if
we
you do, it's
come
damned if you don't.
as we come to the end of this hour of conversation, I want to just say to hear you say something like that when they are on their back foot and after losing so much is it's like as if I foretold this. It was going to be so I knew that this was going to happen. You're going to lose your militias, you're going to lose Hezbollah, you're going to be on your back foot, you're going to get struck really hard the first time. Now that you are being threatened, you're gonna now everybody's like, oh, okay, now we have to make friends with Israel and see who the enemy is. It's really comedic to see, especially from the rhetoric that I heard from yourself for the last couple of years, where Iran's gonna strike them
No, no,
and they're gonna,
no, no,
we're gonna
this is
take them.
this is
Now let's be friends.
yeah, no,
That's
this is
funny.
wishful thinking. This is wishful thinking. I don't think that they're going to do it. If I was there, I wouldn't do it myself. But I'm saying,
No, they won't.
on a
They won't. They'll
hypothetical
never
level,
do it.
if they did that, then who will be the next enemy? I'm very curious to see. It could be Egypt. I want to see who the next enemy will be.
Do you know who I think the next enemy would be right away?
Please tell me.
In my opinion, the next enemy is going to be Turkey.
There you go. And this is why Turkey is also very careful to support this whole shouting from the top of the building about Iran, Iran, Iran. The Turks are not doing that. The people doing it are the Arabs. And at some point, the military machine is going to turn against the likes of Egypt. and they're going to create enemies out of the UAE and all these countries. It's turn by turn, and one thing with Israel and America is that they keep you as friends because they need you to fight the other guy, and when the other guy is completely destroyed, then they look for other ones. And yeah, as we come to the end of the conversation, thank you so much for participating in this. This has been enlightening. We've been able to share ideas. We don't have to agree with each other,
Of course.
on most of the
I'm
points.
happy to come back on. I still have a lot of things I would like to say. But if I'm to leave this conversation with anything and for people to keep an eye out, I really recommend you keep an eye out on all the aircraft that are moving towards the Middle East. And if you're very fascinated with what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, take a look at how many high-ranking Iranian officials start flipping sides and have been Mossad the whole time and are against the regime. Keep an eye on that, because I guarantee you at some point we're going to hear something about some generals who had ties with the United States, and they're definitely talking to them. Because if the Venezuelan bodyguard was working for the CIA, what do you think is happening in Iran with the huge diaspora of people who are against the regime? There's definitely someone in there who's working for the Americans, and we'll see in the next couple of weeks.
I absolutely agree with you. Thank you so much for coming. And for those listening, thank you so much for coming and participating in this. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for coming. Yes. As we come to the end of this, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and most importantly, leave your comments. And I'll respond to them in the next video. And if there's any other topic you want us to talk about as the US is angling to go to war in Iran, please do so. I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe